The title of this workshop is Get Out of Your Own Way. How to manage change. We go through a whole lot of it in our lives, whether we want it or not. And I'll tell you a little bit about me. I am a life coach. I do one-on-one coaching for women who just need a little help figuring out what they want or accomplishing what they want, and they can't quite do it on their own. And sometimes that might be starting over after divorce. You know, you've got a blank slate, you don't know what to do with it, or not really being happy, not sure why, or I have a client who just felt so overwhelmed and so much chaos by everything going on in her life and just wanted some peace. And so it's something that I've evolved into because I've had a lot of change in my own life. I've had tons of career changes. I've probably had something like 20 careers over my life. And had a lot of personal change too, from being unexpectedly divorced to losing a house to losing investment properties and declaring bankruptcy and having two teenage daughters who never talked to me for a period of time. But it's life. It's literally life, and we get faced with this stuff all the time. So I feel like I've evolved into this place of helping other women, and I just love it. It's super fun. I feel very passionate about it, and that's what I'm doing these days. So I figured today we would just talk about the stages of change as I see them. I think we all tend to, I think there are stages that when we're faced with change that we all go through. I'll talk about how to move through them. I have a couple of exercises we could try, and then Q&A, but don't wait until the end if you have questions. Just interrupt me. I don't mind at all. Okay, so as I see it, the 6 stages of change are right here, and change starts with some kind of trigger. And I always think of it as being one of 2 types. There's the type of internal slow burn where you realize something isn't quite right. You may be in a relationship that you aren't satisfied with. You know, I have a good friend of mine. She's probably about 40 now. When she was 30, she wanted nothing more than to be married and have children. And she found a man and she got married. They had 3 kids. And now she's like, I'm not happy, you know? And so I think for about a year she'd been struggling with that, and she made the decision that she wanted to get a divorce. So that type of trigger, I think, happens in a stage, and it does happen over time. But then there are triggers that you don't expect. I didn't expect my husband to tell me he wanted a divorce. I literally didn't see it coming. You might get laid off. Someone you love or you care about may die unexpectedly. And all of a sudden your life has changed. And you get thrown into this next stage, which is chaos. You really don't know what's happening. I mean, I think the chaos feels incredibly overwhelming when you don't expect the change. But even when you do, when you are triggered by that slow internal burn, you're still overwhelmed and confused, and you don't know, what am I going to do next? I mean, probably everyone in this room has had some kind of experience that, felt chaotic. I certainly have. For me, the chaos seemed to last for a really long time, and I didn't know what to do, where to go, who to be for a long time. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a mother, but a part-time mother. I had been homeschooling my kids, but I needed a job, so I had to put them back into school. I didn't have paid employment. I didn't know what to do. And in the beginning, the chaos was so bad that I would have to get through my day, not even hour by hour, but sometimes 5 minutes by 5 minutes. And so that's the chaos stage. But eventually you kind of shift and you adjust, right? There's a new normal in your life that you aren't, that you become used to. So for me, that was like new schedules, adjusting to the fact that I only had my kids half the time. I went out and I got new employment and reconfigured my house so that I could rent half of it and live in half of it. And so you adjust, and you eventually realized, okay, I'm still here, I haven't died, and I'm getting used to this. And then you start to realize, okay, maybe not everything in this situation is all bad. It's not quite as awful as your brain told you in the beginning. So, at first it felt devastating to lose my kids for 50% of the time. And then one day I was like, oh, I don't have my kids 50% of the time. I've got time that I didn't used to have. And so that became kind of a good thing. I consider the next stage to be consideration, where you realize, okay, I do have options. I do have choices. This isn't a death sentence. I can figure this out. I decided that I would take this opportunity to completely be intentional with my life. I had a blank slate. I had sort of lived by default, and up until the marriage fell apart, and then I decided to be a lot more deliberate and a lot more intentional. So I started to think about different possibilities for myself. I thought about, becoming a personal trainer. I thought about, getting another professional job. I had a lot of experience in the software industry and doing technical writing and web development and things like that. I thought about going back to grad school. I thought about becoming a waitress and just keeping it really simple, or I don't have the type of job that I really have to think about once I'm home. So considered a lot of options. And then eventually you have to pick one, right? And you become determined that you're going to do something. And that requires taking action so that things don't stay the same. You're going to start figuring things out. So for me, I did go back to grad school. I did get a part-time job at the university, and I just became determined to accomplish this and to live intentionally. And when you're in that determination stage and you're taking action, that just means you're doing something, and some things work out really well and some things don't. Some things may feel like failures, but they're both, in my mind, successes, because you learn from everything that you try and everything that you do, even when it feels wrong. So, I did start to become a personal trainer, and I worked at the Y, and I would invest a lot of time in preparing, and I'd have to pay for all the programming, and I would teach 1 hour a week. And I realized this wasn't worth my time. I was doing 10 hours of practice and paying, $30 every quarter for something that I was getting paid $10 an hour once a week to do. So I'm like, that isn't really working out for me. So, but I figured out, I was determined, I did the action, and decided not to do it, and that's fine. I had a great experience. And then eventually, once you move through all of your changes and you accomplish something, you enter this very magical stage in my mind, which is transformation. And this is where you become wiser, you become, more self-aware. And, when I think about my own life, and, I've been divorced now for 8.5 years, maybe. I'm a completely different person today than I was when I was that wife and mother in a family unit, and in my mind in a very positive way. Like I'm very connected with who I am and what I stand for, and you know what's important to me. And I used to just live mostly by default, like what do the kids need, what does my husband need, and put everyone else's needs first, and you know, and I had the leftovers. And so in that case, my transformation is just like I'm important too. And so those are my observations in terms of stages of change. But I do also think that it's very common for people to get stuck. And I think these are the two stages. The chaos, where you just feel completely overwhelmed and almost shut down, and you know, your brain is on overdrive telling you how awful everything is. You might think, I can't handle this, I don't know what to do, I have too much to do, I'm so lost, this wasn't supposed to happen. And it's just, it's very easy just to get stuck there, to just do nothing. And I think that when you're in that stage, you're very oriented on the past. You can't quite, you're not ready yet to look out to the future. But, and also some people just kind of enjoy chaos and drama and invite it into their lives. My ex-husband is like that. He continues to surprise me with the way that he invites chaos. And he just isn't ready. Maybe he'll never be ready to move on. But you know what? That's okay. That's where he's at. And then also the consideration stage, where you have options in front of you and you think about trying one of them, but that's all you do. You just think about it, but you don't actually do anything. And you have a lot of what if thoughts. What if I fail? What if people, you know, don't think I'm doing the right thing? What if I run out of money? And so there's a lot of fear involved in that stage.
And, you know, it reminds me very much of Myers-Briggs. Are you familiar with Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, from a long time ago. I haven't looked at that in years.
Yeah, so there's one personality trait where some people are very quick into action. They don't even consider all the possibilities. They find one or two and boom, they move. And other people, want to consider everything. And it's very, very hard to move in a direction, because when you move in a direction, what you're doing is you're closing all of these doors.
Right.
And so you don't, and to me that part of personality always intrigues me, because in my family there's a lot of similarities, and then there's this personality trait in my family where people are very strong in moving to action, or they're very strong in considering all the possibilities.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And that's consideration where those people will get stuck.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it as a personality trait, but yeah, that's really interesting. Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're all different.
Yeah, ready, aim versus ready, fire, ready. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's
a
good.
great
Fire, aim.
Well, they're ready.
Compared to aim.
Yeah, I know.
Never really fire. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 It's good to have both people in an
Yes.
organization. Yeah. Because I'm a fire, and then think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any other thoughts about these? Have you lived through anything like this yourself?
I think the chaos, is when you were going through chaos, I was going to say, boy, I know people who get really stuck. And just never, and then I was like, well, I don't need to say that. And then you came around and like, yeah, people, you see people where you're like, wow, okay, like your dog died 7 years ago.
Right.
It's really hard. It's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but there's a life after your dog.
Right.
Or I mean, it could be anything, but you definitely, go through life and you find like, wow, you're just really in chaos all the time
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
like chaos. It's comfortable.
It's comforting for many people.
Yeah,
You know, I think
it's-
in particular if you were raised in a lot of chaos and it's
Yeah.
all you know, maybe. I think that
Yeah.
happens.
And I think, I don't know what the stages of grief are, but I would think
Yeah,
that
there's
there's
some similarities and
there's-
overlap.
Yeah, and there's you meet people who just like can never move beyond the death of whoever it is who died.
Yeah,
They just can't
right.
move on. And I think whatever that parallel stage is, I think it would be chaos, the
Yeah.
chaos of grief.
Yeah. You gonna say something?
No.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
I think there's a concept in chaos where you get sympathy,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
which makes it very easy to
Yeah.
stay, makes it comfortable
Yeah.
to stay in that
And
state.
support, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Almost
you get
like you're the
attention.
victim.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
I'm not saying you do it for the sympathy, but it gets.
Maybe not on a
You could-
conscious
yeah,
level,
there's a
but I bet
subconscious-
subconsciously you do.
Mm.
I know, I think we're all thinking of someone that we know.
Well, and the other thing with chaos too is it can be like affirming or something, like it's sort of like if you don't think like that you deserve to like whatever find love and happiness or whatever, you
Right.
can keep going back to a past relationship and like feeling chaotic and being like, oh well, I deserve this or whatever, just because you like what do they call it, living in like in integrity. So like I can't be like, oh yeah, I'm a world-class speaker or something, because that would be not me being in integrity, right? So I'm just wondering if it's hard for people to want things if they don't feel like it's hard for them to get out of chaos if they don't think that they deserve
Yeah.
the thing
Mhm.
Yeah.
that they're trying to get away from or trying to move toward, I guess, more accurately.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my opinion, you need 3 things to move along.
Perfect.
Nice segue. That was beautiful.
Awesome.
And the first is probably the most important, is that you have to believe it's possible. You have to believe that you can accomplish something. So if you never believe that you could be a world-class speaker, for example,
Mhm.
that doesn't, you won't. You never will, right? And then once you believe it, you have to decide that you're going to go for it. And in that decision-making process, you really have to become committed.
Mm. Yeah.
And then that third piece I've mentioned is taking action, doing something.
The other thought about chaos, only because I tend to perhaps exist in chaos a little bit in myself, is that for me it's, well, look at what a good job I'm doing because I am so picky. I'm so busy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a great daughter to my elderly parents because I am doing so much for them. Like, I am great at running my business because I'm so busy, I can hardly catch my breath.
Right.
I'm a great mother because look how busy I am being a
Right.
mother.
Right.
Instead of like, oh, well, not that I bake cookies, but did I really need to bake 200 cookies this weekend?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't even, like, I see it in other people, I recognize it in myself of like, oh, well, I'm justifying what a good
Right.
job I'm doing because I have so much to do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very common.
Yeah.
When we take a lot on our plate, whether we need to or not, because we think it makes
Makes
us
us
more
better.
valuable,
Yeah.
better, productive.
Yeah.
That whole, I'm so busy thing, a lot of it is a myth we create in our minds. We might say, I'm
I'm
so
busy,
busy,
I'm
but I'm spending an hour or 2 or 3
Doing something
social media
stupid.
feed
Right.
or
If I'm busy, I'm important.
Yeah.
yeah, right, exactly. I'm valuable.
That's my problem.
Sure. So I thought I'd tell a little story about moving through these 6 stages with some furniture that I recently put together. So
Good
this
job.
is a small example. A couple weeks ago, a friend of mine and I went to IKEA, which is, if you know, far, far away. The closest one is in Stoneham, no, Stoneton, Massachusetts. Yeah. So actually I went there twice, 2 Saturdays in a row with 2 different friends. The first time we ran out of time because we had to meet someone in Portland, so I came home empty-handed. So I found another friend to take me down the next weekend. Anyway, the trigger in this case was that I needed a place to put books, okay? And so I bought 4 bookcases. This is a picture of 2 of them that I put together in one spot. So the trigger was I needed books, and then went down to IKEA, came home, and the boxes sat in the front foyer. Entered the chaos stage. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with these boxes. I've never put furniture together before. I don't know how to do that. What am I going to do? How am I going to put these things together? Why did I do this? And I was like completely overwhelmed in my mind by stupid boxes. You know, each bookcase had 2 boxes, so there were 8 of them, and then I had also bought a desk which has 2 more boxes, so I had 10 boxes, and I would step over them, and I would step around them, and I would get irritated every time I saw them. So finally, I'm like, okay, I need to think about how I'm going to solve this problem, and I figured that I had 3 choices. I could either put it together myself. Sounds like a terrible idea. I could hire a handyman. I don't really know any handyman, and I was kind of pissed off. I'd have to pay more money if I did that, or I could ask a friend. And then I thought, you know, if I ask a friend, we're probably not going to be friends anymore, right? So, I went from chaos to adjustment in the fact that I adjusted to these boxes sitting here for probably a week, and then I moved into the consideration stage. What am I actually going to do? So then I finally decided, I became determined. I mean, I can do this. I can follow directions. I'm kind of, you know, I'm smart. I can figure things out. They're just directions. So then I had the belief. I believed it was possible. I became determined. And then I took action. So I laid out all the parts, and I got out the book, and I organized all the hardware, and I started reading it. And I was like, oh, this is actually kind of great. There's no instructions, there's just pictures. I just have to follow one picture at a time. So I very cautiously put that first one together. I did it perfectly. It took a long time, and I stood it up, and I'm like, oh, I'm so proud, right? So I moved on to the second one, and I followed the directions, and it went a little bit faster, so I was becoming more of an expert. The third one, I got really cocky, and I'm like, I've got this. I don't need the directions. I'm boom, 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 boom. Stood it up. One did not look like the others. And I was like, huh. And I had reversed a trim piece, and so some pre-drilled holes were exposed. So I made a mistake. I had done something wrong. And I thought, well, I can either live with it or I can take it apart and redo it. So I laid it back down. I took the whole thing apart and put it back together. I'm like, well, I guess it wasn't the end of the world. I learned something there. And then I did the fourth one and put that one up, and that one was beautiful. So my transformation was that I became an expert at putting together this one style of furniture, but I literally went through all those stages. You know, the trigger, the chaos, the adjustment, the consideration. I think I'm forgetting one, but then eventually the transformation. So that's a small example of change, but sometimes change looks like this, right? And sometimes on the business side, you know, if you're running your business, you know, things happen. The industry changes, or you have to lay people off, or, you know, fire someone, or partnerships, things like that. And then on the personal side, I mean, we've hit on a lot of those things about life that just actually happen. And you go through exactly the same stages. So, in my opinion, getting through the changes or the stages, getting to your transformation, it requires that you manage your mind. The mind left untamed will tell you lots of lies, and it's very they're very believable. Things like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me, I can't handle this, I'm never going to survive. And then, we will find evidence to support these thoughts that are just happening by default. I don't know if it's the ego or what part of the brain it is, but it's just saying terrible thoughts that we begin to believe. But when you become intentional with what you're thinking, you get very different results than just letting your brain, I guess, be unmanaged. So I want to share this model with you that I use all the time. I use it with all of my clients. It was created by a woman named Brooke Castillo. She has a business called the Life Coach School. And basically, she studied all of our modern thought leaders like Deepak Chopra and Tony Robbins and Byron Katie and others who Abraham Hicks, all of these thought leaders on thought, basically. And she realized that they're all saying something very similar, but in their own unique way. So what she did was she boiled everything down into this model. She literally just calls it the model. I mean, it's a thought model in my brain. So it looks like this. It starts with a circumstance. A circumstance is a thing in the world that happens. It's usually out of our control, but a circumstance is always neutral. It's just a thing. And then the circumstance will trigger thoughts in our, that just happen. And it's our thoughts that make the circumstance feel positive or negative. So our thoughts trigger our feelings. And our feelings are what actually, our feelings determine what we actually do in the world. It's not our thoughts, it's how we feel. And then what we do, our actions, determines our results. So just to recap, a circumstance is a thing, it's neutral. A thought is something that happens in our brain, but we can also be very intentional with our thoughts. This is where our power is, which is why I put a star by it, because we can choose different things. A feeling is an emotion or it's a vibration in our body. And I like to think of vibrations as rungs on a ladder, because the vibrations that are the lowest are those feelings that feel the worst, like powerlessness, hopelessness, depression. Those literally vibrate at a different frequency in our bodies. And then, like, if you were at the very top of the ladder, you would have the highest vibrating emotions, which is gratitude, love, joy. Like, those are up there. And then in the middle, we've got things like frustration and anger and, maybe overwhelmment. And I think that we spend a lot of our time, a lot of our days, like scurrying up and scurrying down the ladder, and sometimes, and it's impossible to go to make one big leap from the bottom, from like feeling depressed or hopeless, to the very top, joyful and loving. You kind of sometimes just have to baby step your way there. And so you can manage your feelings by managing your thoughts. Now let me give you an example, because I know that's a little like kind of high level. And let's say you get laid off, and you didn't see it coming, and you immediately, your brain starts telling you, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, it's gonna be so hard to find another job, I'll never be able to pay my mortgage. You know, those kind of thoughts create emotions in our body that feel really bad. Despair, discouragement, depressed. And when you're in that place emotionally in your body, it's very hard to take any kind of positive action. It's very easy to do things like avoid and sleep and bury yourself in social media or, you know, Netflix or things like that. And so what happens is that because you're not actually taking action, you really don't find another job. And results in our lives always provide evidence to the thoughts. So you have these thoughts, never going to find anything, worst thing ever, I'm not going to pay the mortgage, and then you don't find another job, and that provides evidence to the thoughts, and you just keep looping around and around. So what you can do instead is to choose different thoughts. Oops, my alignment got a little wonky there, but that's okay. But you have to choose thoughts that you believe. Like it goes back to that first step I told you, getting from one stage to another. You have to believe the thoughts that you're thinking. You could think positive thoughts all day long, but if you didn't believe them, they really would have no effect. So you could think, you know, out of all the possibilities that exist in the world, it's totally possible I'll find a job. Like that feels a little bit better than I'm never going to find a job. Like it's possible. Or, you know, I have found a job before, so I probably can find a job again. You have evidence in your life. Or finding a job is hard, but I can do hard things. I've done hard things. And so those kind of thoughts create a very different vibration. You might feel relief, or determined, or strong, or empowered. And it's the feelings that will help you take the action that you need to actually move forward. So you might update your resume, you might reach out to a headhunter, you might start talking to people. And so the result is that you're getting closer. I mean, it might still take you some time, you still might have to rinse and repeat, but you're not just staying stuck where nothing is ever happening. Any questions? Any thoughts? Makes sense?
I think it's very interesting. Well, I have two thoughts. One is, so I have a husband who's just like non-emotional.
Yep.
He's just like, we say he's emotionally dead. But I'm sure there's something in there, but there's not very little in there. And which is probably why he married me. And what's interesting is we will go through an experience, and I'm a very emotional person. So I immediately am like, oh, there's this big, like there's a big result from whatever experience happened. And he's like, it just happened. Like it's something that happened, you know, whatever. Let's say we get a flat tire. And I'm like, oh, we're on our way to this thing, and what are we going to do? And, oh, I'm so thankful you know how to fix a tire. Oh, but there's no tire in the car. Well, but that's your job. And then you have the tire in the car. And he's like, it's a flat tire. That's literally all it is. It's a flat tire. There's no emotion about the flat tire.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So that's one thought I have. And the second thing is, it's interesting to think about some of the things that I feel like in my life that I'm a little stuck on. Because the phase that I'm at right now is, so I'm 47, and I'm like, okay, so rinse and repeat. So I've been through some things multiple times. If I don't like them, then I have the ability to change. Like, I'm too freaking busy.
Yeah.
If I don't like being this busy, I have the ability
Yes.
to change being this busy. I don't totally exactly know how, but it's interesting to sit here and say like, okay, instead of constantly saying the old tapes, that's
Right.
Barry Kaufman talks about tapes, instead of the old tapes of like, I have young children, I have old parents, I'm the breadwinner, I run my own business, blah, 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 to like, so what are the new tapes?
Mm-hmm.
Which are,
Yeah,
I am really busy, but I have chosen to create that busyness.
that's right.
Why am I that busy? I can figure out why I'm that busy, and I can figure out how to not be.
Right,
That
right.
busy.
That's your power. It's right
Yeah.
here in this thought line.
Yeah, and then it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I can do anything I set my mind to, so if I don't want to be this busy,
Yeah.
it may take me a year, but
Right.
I can do
Yeah.
this.
I can learn how to say no.
Yeah,
I can learn how to not volunteer.
yeah,
Yeah. And this right here too is so interesting about the flat tire. Right? So for you it's very dramatic.
yeah,
Yeah, and you're feeling like overwhelmed and chaotic and what are we going to do? Helpless to a degree. And he's like,
it's a
It's
flat
good.
tire, it has nothing
I got
to,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, there's
There's
no
a
emotion to it.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, but it's the thought though, because for him the thought is probably something like, "I've got this."
I've changed a tire before.
Yeah,
We'll get there when
that's
we get
why
there.
he has no emotion because of his thinking.
but it's
Yeah.
even, it's interesting, even, you know, like, you know, big, you know, I'm, you know, his dad hasn't died, but when his dad dies, you know, he's like, yep, he's dead, everybody dies, I didn't have a good relationship with him anyway, it doesn't really impact my life, where I would be like, oh, but this is lost possibility of what it could have been, and could I have done this, and could, you know, he's just
Yeah.
like, things are just facts rather than emotions.
Right.
So he sort of goes from like circumstance to action. There's not a lot of feeling in there.
Well, it's because of his thoughts though. His thought might be, I wasn't close to my dad.
It's just a fact.
It's
He
just
died.
a fact.
Everybody
So
dies.
he doesn't get worked up emotionally.
Right.
He's just solid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all happening. It's
Yeah.
just his emotion, his response to his thoughts isn't. Oh, I mean, his thoughts aren't
So dramatic.
so dramatic, so his emotions aren't so dramatic.
So what steps do you take to encourage people to get into that thought process if they're in the, oh my god, we're gonna die because we had a flat tire?
Yeah. it's literally
Coming right up.
it's this model. Like I use this all the time with my clients. Like
Mhm.
almost every session. And, you know, I give them this book, you know, I send this to them in the mail and it has a little summary here and then they get to practice. This is the best, in my experience, the best way to become self-aware
Mhm.
and to make different decisions, just different choices about how you do want to think.
Well, I guess it's like you say, you can easily say, come to that thought that I should do this, but how do you gain the belief?
Yeah, it's practice. It's baby steps. Like I said, you can't go from the bottom rung of the ladder to the top. So
So maybe you acknowledge that it's possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or maybe you say, oh, I know somebody who.
Or you-
or there's like,
yeah.
you know, there's ways to like, instead of being like, I'm gonna make $1 million, I can say like, okay, you know what, I could probably save about $25.
Well, or
I can like, you know what I
That's
mean?
it.
Like,
Yeah.
so I'm good at the thoughts and the actions part. I'm emotionally dead inside, and I have a hard time accessing my feelings about it. I just everything's neutral.
Mhm.
okay,
Everything's really neutral. There's
that's not a bad thing.
no, I was in therapy for a while, and apparently that is a bad
Oh.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, she told me
Well,
that.
I think that's the question is whether you're truly dead or whether you're repressing the feelings.
Well, here's
And
the
I'm not
thing.
saying you particularly.
Well, no, I understand. So she was like, well, Nicole, people have multiple feelings throughout the course of the day, and I was like, well, what do you mean?
Really?
I'm either fine or I'm not fine.
Uh-huh.
And so she assigned me this hilarious thing where she was like, she gave me a little feelings chart which wasn't honestly super helpful. I have since found an app that's a little bit better. That I'll
Of course
show
you
to
have an
guys.
app.
What it is that like the app has like a quadrant, and so you can say like it's like high energy, low energy, sad, happy, and so you can be like, oh, I feel low energy, and then it gives you words. It's like, oh, are you discouraged or are you just frustrated? And you're like, oh, you know what, I'm discouraged. I'm not frustrated. I just need help approximating it. I can't just look at a list of words and be like, I feel like this.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she says every time you go to the bathroom, because you're in the bathroom a few times a day,
Yeah.
think about like, how do I feel? And it took me 3 weeks, and I got to like annoyed. I was like, oh, I had a feeling. It's good. But I still have a really hard time. I can think the thoughts and move the actions. I don't know about the feelings part. Is that if it's important or maybe it isn't? But I feel pretty neutral about most things, honestly.
That's like Adam.
I know, and it freaking pisses people off because like I also don't enjoy necessarily process if I do have a deep feeling. I don't necessarily enjoy processing it with someone else. I like to figure out what I feel about it and then sort of talk to someone about it. But like
That's how I am too. I do a lot of internal processing.
yeah, so so if someone was like, oh, I want you to have this reaction about your dead father, I'd just be like, and so like, yeah, my dad's funeral, and you cry that whole week. I made sandwiches and whatever, did what I had to do, and I cried later, but it was just like kind of a sliver. But yeah, I have a hard time accessing the feelings part. I'm either fine or I'm not fine. And I don't think any of you have seen me really not fine.
Mm-mm.
Well, maybe you
I
have.
haven't.
I've
A
seen
couple
you
of times.
agitated, but that's
Yep. But that's yeah.
yeah.
But like there's not a wide range of Nicole emotions that one can
Well,
experience.
Nicole emotions, when she gets emotions, she goes home and she leaves.
It's true.
Which is the same thing I do. I don't want to deal. I don't want someone to
That's
say.
not witness
If
it.
I have a problem, I've
Yeah.
got to process it myself before I talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you've got somebody stepping back a little bit in that tons of the chaos phase where there's all these different things going on, and you talk about the baby steps,
Right.
is that possibly saying, okay, take this circumstance, which could be, I broke my coffee cup, because that's just one little thing on
Right.
top of everything else, or do you try and do it towards the root cause?
I think in terms of baby steps, it could be like a circumstance. I guess I don't mean like practice with small insignificant things like breaking a coffee cup, but more like if you got laid off,
Yeah.
right, and you're struggling. Like I said, you can't go from being completely overwhelmed and like, oh my god, I'm never gonna find a job, and feeling despair, to like, oh my god, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so happy. You know what I mean? But you might be able to sort of like move up one rung, and I think of that as a baby step.
Yeah,
Like, okay, maybe I'm gonna go from
opposed to
depressed-
I'm going to take a little problem before I look at the big
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, exactly. And I like what Nicole said. Like it literally is just a little bit at a time. I forget the example that you used, but
Well, no,
it was
like
great.
you say
Yeah.
something like okay, well, what feels true to me in this moment where this
In
shit
this
is happening,
moment.
right? Or like, okay, I
Yeah.
lost my job. All right, well, you know what? Like, Julie Vayu, she'd hire me. And then I think of a few other people. I'm like, okay, I can think of 5 people that I could probably get a job from. Or like, okay, you know what? I lent my sister $100. I'm gonna collect that $100 back from her, and I can use it. So you just like start thinking about little wins, and then
That's
you
it.
like look at it,
Yeah.
and then you say, okay, now I'm being realistic. I'm like out of my little hole. I put a little dirt in it to like bring me a little bit up higher. Now I can say, okay, I could probably get another job.
Right.
I can probably expand my search beyond these 5 people who don't hate me and who would hire me, right? I can like look at like what I actually want to be doing, and yeah, I think that's what you mean, right?
Yeah, it's totally
Like
and
what feels true to me, like so I'm gonna
Yeah.
get an awesome job and this is gonna be the best thing that ever happened to me. It doesn't feel true when you're in it, right? But you can say, oh, these other
Right,
things
exactly.
do feel
Well,
true.
and there's a big difference between saying I'm going to earn $1 million and saying I'm going to work towards earning $1 million.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's the
That's-
difference. That's the baby step.
Yes.
You're not
Right.
getting to
Yes.
that first
Yeah.
one that you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're articulating what I said in the terms of,
Yeah.
the first thing is not, oh my God, how did we laid off, but
Yeah.
if the major circumstances you're laid off, your chaos is how am I going to pay my bills?
Yeah.
So you didn't go. I guess maybe, broke the coffee cup was the wrong thing, but,
Yeah.
so your first thought there was, I lent my sister $100.
Or I was trying to think, okay, like how can I make up that? Okay, I've just lost like my revenue.
Yeah.
So like, how am I going to make up that revenue?
Yeah, but
And I go through like, okay, who owes me
Yeah.
money? Who would hire me? Like,
Yeah.
is McDonald's hiring right now? Like,
I think you're right.
yeah.
I think we got the same question.
Yeah,
I just articulated.
totally.
You articulated it better.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And what you're talking about is exactly what our brain does, is that it's always looking for evidence to support our thoughts. So if we're thinking, this is the worst thing ever, our brain is going to start thinking of all the times in our lives where the worst thing ever happened. But once you start looking for like, oh yeah, my sister owes me $100, and then so and so would hire me, like then your brain is being trained to look for possibility. It's like if you
Yeah,
sat
just
on
like
the
the thoughts and actions are like sort of similar. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, like, what things could be true, I guess. Like, yeah, my sister could pay me back,
Yeah. Like if you sat on the front steps of this building and I said to you, I want you to count all the red cars that go by in the next 20 minutes. And you sit there, and I said, I don't want you to get it wrong, right? And you're concentrating, and I said, we're going to compare it to a video. We're going to do that too. I want to see how good you are. And then after 20 minutes, I say, okay, how many blue cars were there?
Right, you're like,
I have no idea, right? Because your brain isn't looking for evidence for blue cars. Your brain is only looking for evidence for red cars. So when you're choosing thoughts that you can believe and hold on to, then your brain will start to provide evidence or, possibility.
Yeah, I might have jumped to the action part, maybe.
Yeah.
I think maybe my
It's
thoughts
still your
and actions
thoughts.
are really
Your
like,
thoughts were still like,
yeah, I guess I'm thinking about asking my sister. I haven't picked up the phone. I called her and been like, where's my
Yeah.
well, it's the fire in the name. You move very quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah, you probably moved through this very fast.
Yeah.
Except there's no feeling step. Well, sometimes there is.
It probably is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's
I
your
know,
awareness isn't there, perhaps.
Maybe, yeah. I know. Well, it is good to know that I am not a
But that's
feelingless person.
that's
I was
so
really worried about it. I had a boyfriend that called me Spock.
spot. That's so funny because you
I don't
are
think of you
such
that way. Yeah.
an intrapersonal person. You're so introspective. You
Yeah, but I
are
put on a
always
front, though,
you're always
until I can't.
setting goals, working
you're
on
very,
goals.
You're very empathetic. Look at all the people you try and help.
It's true.
Sorry.
I do want to.
Oh, that's
Like,
what's
it's a
been
tea
her all the time.
kettle.
Oh, okay. I feel so much better now. I'm like, am I good?
Yeah.
No. That's my dad.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
That's his
that's
little
true.
ringtone.
No, that's fine, but if that's been your emails or whatever bopping off, that's been what I keep hearing.
Yeah. Jane we were hearing sounds and we thought it was
Oh, like-
something in the kitchen.
Like something
or-
the kitchen's gonna blow up.
Oh. There we go. Problem solved. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh,
An
you want to do an
exercise.
exercise?
Oh,
yeah.
All right, open your little
Perfect.
packet to exercise one.
Oh.
And you can practice doing this, like, kind of a before and after thought model about, something, whether you're currently facing or something that you've faced in the past. Try to identify a circumstance, what you were thinking about it or are thinking about it, and what you could do.
Wait, what do you mean by an old model and a new? Oh, you start with the same circumstance in both.
Yeah, the
models.
circumstance is
Okay.
the same. Yes, thank you for.
Okay,
pointing that
no,
out.
just making sure.
Yep.
Yeah, circumstance is the same. All right.
Does anyone want to share theirs? I could put it on the
Sure.
whiteboard, or we could just do it verbally. So I wasn't sure about the whiteboard
Yeah.
thing.
Well, this was interesting for me because the circumstance and the result end up being the same in both
Really?
things. But
Okay.
no, but like it's slightly different. Okay, so I just had to move like last week, and just like in the car the other day, Megan was like, "So my daughters are coming back for the summer, and I don't," and so I'm like, I've literally just moved, and I'm like my
Wait, who's
May
Megan?
housing, my new roommate.
Okay.
My May housing, and so I'm just like, so I got in this, like, I was like, fucking A, moving. I have to, like, move again in, like, less than a year. So, like, I've moved, I don't know, 30 times in 37 years. I'm just really getting
That sounds
fucking
like
tired.
me. I hear
Anyway,
you.
yeah, so my thoughts are, like, I'm so behind compared to everyone else financially. I'll never be able to afford a house. You know, I wish I could set things up the way I want and not have to like put them in a box every year, you know, and I don't know where I belong, you know what I mean? And so I was feeling discouraged, poor, helpless, you know, and a little bit angry about our economic climate, but that's a whole thing. And then so my actions are like, right, I'm just gonna keep taking whatever I can get, or I can go live in my mom's basement. Those are gonna be my actions. And my result is my little vagabond lifestyle, you know. But my new model, okay, so I'm, you know, moving. I'm like, okay. So I can save some money by having a roommate, you know. I can, you know, do fun things that you can do when you live with friends, like cook dinner together or go to the movies or whatever. You know, and I can see what I like about this house and add it to my list of things I might want in my house in the future, you know, and I know that I'll always be able to find something. Even if it's not ideal, I will probably be able to find someone who will let me
Yeah.
like sleep in their spare bedroom with my
Right.
dog. And so then my feelings were like, okay, so hopeful, content, and I feel like people care, you know what I mean? So my actions might be I'm starting a savings account for my own house, you know. You know, my actions might be to, you know, think about the house I want and think of a plan B, you know, in case my living situation falls apart. So the result is still my vagabond lifestyle, but either a plan to be done with it or a plan to be happy with it at the end, one or the other.
But the actions, repeat the actions in each model again. I
Okay.
have such a hard time
Oh,
processing
actions?
verbally. Yeah.
Well, like, I mean, the actions in the old one are just to really not do anything and to just, like, take what I can get.
Okay.
Like, whatever.
So basically, you kind of stay where you are. Like nothing really moves forward because you're not doing.
Except
a lot.
I'm just like, or like if I'm really desperate, I can call my mom and be like, can I go live in your basement? Because that's what she offered me when I got divorced.
It's good.
She didn't say her basement, but she did want me to come
Yeah.
and move back home when I got divorced.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But
so-
the second model, like you're taking steps forward. Like you're saving for your house. You're planning
Or-
for your future. The other
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
you're not.
No, it's true. Yeah, I'm just sort of like dealing with it if it happens. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the first model, you could be basically, I'm pissed off and therefore I'm starting a savings account. I want to get out of this situation.
That's true.
The difference, what I hear, is
Mhm.
one is you're working from a place of disempowerment, and one is you are guiding your life saying, I'm taking action and this is what I'm doing. Rather than I'm being a victim,
Mm-hmm.
because to me, I see the action as being the same. I either accept that I'm a vagabond,
Mhm.
or I take steps towards it.
Mhm.
But the place that the emotional place that it's coming from
Yeah, that's what I mean.
is very different. One is I'm a victim and I'm disempowered and therefore I have to get my own house because this is all totally fucked up.
Mhm.
Whereas the other one is, you know what? I'm choosing. I'm gonna get my own house.
Mhm.
See, I think the results are different though. I
Uh-huh.
think in one, you're just like taking whatever you can find,
Uh-huh.
the dregs, you know, the
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
without intention. And I feel
Mhm.
like the second one, you're being a lot more intentional about your future.
Mm-hmm.
And those are very different results.
Yeah, the first one you're taking whatever's given to you, so like
Yeah.
you won't do anything until
Until I'm kicked out.
until
and then
April
I'll-
15th,
Yeah.
and then you'll find whatever you know.
Yeah, whatever
is
course
there,
there's gonna
whereas-
take me.
Whereas
you
this,
know,
this one you got.
or like
the second one you're planning, so you'll have
yeah, living in
some
acre space
resources
like a
together.
weirdo.
to.
So what were the difference in feelings again?
Discouraged, helpless, angry, the first one,
Yeah.
and then hopeful, content, cared about.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are a lot better.
Yeah.
All because of how you're choosing to think.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Anyone else? No pressure to share,
Mine's kind of odd, it's very similar to yours. 'Cause
Oh, really?
Yeah. My circumstances moving out of town.
Oh. Yeah.
The thoughts, I miss being able to walk everywhere, I miss being able to get to the ocean really quickly. It's inconvenient, the time waste, driving back and forth, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Which leaves you kind of melancholy, feeling like you're rushed, feeling like you're lazy because you're not getting out and walking. Basically, actions, not a lot, just sitting there. And the result is you dislike it. Moving out of town, if you think I got a great commute, there's space to have a yard, access to nature, the deer in the backyard, blah, 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 blah. So the feeling is, well, I kind of like these bits about it. So I guess the action is the acceptance of doing it and concentrating on the bits you like and the fact that you can always move back.
Yeah.
So it's,
Right.
the result's really living with it
Okay.
because I'm not sure I really want to live out of town, you know.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'll ever be totally happy out there, but making the best of what you've got.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in that, it sounds more negative than I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. Like I said, I'm such a hard time with verbal processing. It's hard for me to remember all of the things.
So I had a much harder time with mine. I actually had a hard time choosing about what
Yeah.
to do, which is not me normally. But I got stuck on circumstance because I got stuck on the fact that circumstance is something that happens to you that we can't control.
Right.
And I was like, well, my business is something I totally control. Like, that's not happening to me. So I actually, I feel very much in control of my life, so I had a hard time thinking of something that, happened to me.
But you could say the same thing with moving out of town. You know, I could have chosen
Yeah.
not to do that.
Yeah.
But there's reasons why we did it, so it kind of happened to me even though...
So you're choosing to continue running your business. Like
something no business that
You're
could
not-
happen would be a guess that did something.
or
Right, so I settled on a conversation that somebody had to me that I didn't like. That I'm having a little trouble moving on from.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so this summer, my brother, technically my half brother, but brother, talked to me about about my relationship with my mom. So my parents are older, I'm the caregiver, I live here, 4 other siblings live away.
Yeah.
And they all come in the summer and they all tell me what they think should be happening. So anyway, so my brother had a very strong conversation with me,
Okay.
to me, it wasn't really with me, about what my issues were in my relationship with my mom and how I should be caring for my mom. His
Okay.
concerns about that. Okay, so the old model went something like this. He's a shithead, he's a shithead. My old thoughts were, well, I didn't even write them down because they were so bad. They're so strong. But my old thoughts were, Mark is a very out of touch individual and basically dumped all of his emotional baggage on me.
Okay.
My feelings were, I feel very uncared for by my brother, and that I didn't want to have a fight with him, so I didn't set a boundary about what he was expressing. I just took it because it was easier. And my action is, I actually haven't talked to my brother since then, and I'm feeling unbelievably pissed off. And so the result is, it leads back to thought. I didn't write my thought down.
You said
He's a
Mark
shithead,
was
he's a
a
jerk.
jerk.
Oh,
Yeah.
so my result
Yeah.
is, yeah, he's a
The result
shithead.
is you
So the result is you don't have a good relationship with your brother.
No, I'm really pissed off.
Yeah. So you're disconnected. That's
Yeah.
the result.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the new model, this is really hard. So the new model was, okay, circumstance, Mark talking to me about mom. Thought, Mark is expressing his emotions Mark has concerns about, and then that's interesting that I wrote my mom, because it's not his mom, but we don't differentiate that. That's interesting that I wrote my mom and our dad. But anyway, so Mark is expressing his emotions. He is concerned about mom and dad. But then in parentheses I put, but it's not with me and hurt my feelings. So
Yeah,
this
okay.
was this is hard. So
Yeah.
I really am trying to reframe this, right?
Yeah.
And I've gone through and I've reframed this like at least 100 times with my husband of like, Mark's not a very self-aware person. He was dumping a little bit of his emotions. He's also a very judgmental person, so it was coming out as judgment towards me.
So it's really about
Here's
him
the-
and not really about how you're dealing with it. It's not really about how you're caring, it's just how he's perceiving it.
Well, so then I was like, but I'm trying really hard not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, there's value in what Mark is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying not to, you know,
So your thoughts about
Yes.
Mark
yeah.
are what's making it feel very negative. Mark is neutral.
Okay.
Mark gets to say whatever Mark wants to
Yeah,
say.
okay.
You can't control Mark.
Yeah.
Maybe Mark's your circumstance.
Mark is your
Yeah,
circumstance.
yeah. Mark talking
Mark's
to me is a
the
circumstance. Okay,
Yeah.
so my new thoughts
Yeah.
are Mark, just acknowledging Mark is expressing his emotions.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
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 Okay, so that's a
Mark-
thought you can
Mark
believe.
is concerned about mom and
You
dad.
believe that.
Yes. Okay. What else? What's the
So when you think those two thoughts,
Yes.
and don't bring
Yeah.
in the other thoughts, how
Okay.
do those two thoughts make you feel?
Oh, I feel glad that Mark is expressing his emotions
So glad.
for Mark.
So glad.
Yeah.
Just keep
Okay,
Keep
glad.
it simple. Keep just
Yeah,
glad.
and I feel reassured that Mark cares about mom and dad.
So you're glad and reassured. Those are
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah.
So when you're
Okay.
feeling glad and you're feeling reassured, what do you do?
Still not talk to Mark.
No, because you're
I-
still thinking about the old model.
Yeah. Okay.
You're stuck in the old
I'm
model.
glad and I'm reassured, so my stomach relaxes.
Okay.
Okay.
Breathe easier.
Yeah.
Relax.
And my stomach relaxes. I feel connected.
Okay, that's a feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's an action that happens?
And sometimes action is inaction. Sometimes like it's doing nothing. Maybe there's nothing you need to do.
Maybe
Okay.
the action is, I'm gonna let Mark cool off a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
I'm going to be quiet.
Or maybe the action is I'm going to concentrate on that rather than the hurt that you felt.
Or like if you know you're gonna talk to him about things.
Because you keep
you're gonna
saying
talk to him in the
this should-
future.
this should-
You have a plan to talk to him maybe in the future? Or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're just not talking to him now,
Right.
Right.
but you have a plan to talk to him in the future.
So it could be just like I'm letting Mark be Mark.
That's an action, yeah.
Okay.
So the action could be when you next talk to him, you don't bring in the last conversation into your interaction with him.
That I
You
don't
could
need
let it.
to
You could
revisit.
drop it. That could be an action. We're not going to keep rehashing this and bringing it up and.
Or if you said he has a valid concern, you could look into thing he's concerned about, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe the action is look at what he said and evaluate
Yeah.
Yeah.
what's
Evaluate
what's
his
useful
concerns.
and what's emotional.
Yeah.
Yes, which I have done, except I can't move past the being pissed off part.
So this is where you need to practice your new thoughts.
Yeah.
This is where you need, and literally we have to practice. We have to think about those thoughts multiple times a day, every day. You might even write them down on a piece of paper. You know, I forget what they are now, but
Mark is not a shit.
Mark, well, no, not that one. I appreciate Mark being concerned.
Uh-huh.
Mark was expressing himself. Right?
Mark cares.
Mark cares. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you think those thoughts over and over,
Yeah.
it's the baby step, right? Like you're gonna like right now you're hanging on that rung of the ladder that feels terrible, right? You want to take you want to move, right? And the
Right,
only way
because
you
I don't
can
want
move
to keep
is
thinking about this conversation,
Right.
because it's
yeah.
taking way too much
So you
energy.
get to choose. You get to choose your thoughts,
Uh-huh.
and so it takes practice to stop thinking the old thoughts, to
Yeah.
stop playing the old tapes, and to start playing the new tapes. And I'm not saying this is overnight. But that's the work. That is how you move forward. That's how you manage your mind. Oh, I was gonna say, you were saying that you feel very neutral about a lot of things. I noticed in myself, like I have evolved to become very neutral about things, and I think it pisses my mother off because she wants to talk about the relatives and she wants to get worked up about, a party that she's having, and I'm like, yeah, either people will come or they won't. And she's like, she'll just walk away. She's
Yeah.
like, we
Yeah.
bought a house together, so we live together. And, she wanted to have this big, huge family reunion. And in the beginning, everyone was like, oh, yeah, we'll be there. And it's in Pittsburgh, which isn't easy for families and stuff like that. So people are dropping out. And she's mad. And I'm like, it's going to be a good time, whether they're there or not. The rest of us are going to have a ball. But she wants to she wants to feel bad. She wants to have these thoughts that these people our relatives don't care. I'm like, I don't think that it's that they don't care. It's just everyone's busy. It's hard. That's a long drive. If you're coming from Maine or Virginia or, wherever. It's not nothing, so.
Well, and it is going back to that, like, in that stage of chaos.
Right.
Or victim,
Yeah.
or, like, that's a really powerful, like, your
feel
mom
so
is,
righteous.
Your mom is
Yeah.
getting something
Right.
by being so
better.
angry that
Yeah.
people aren't coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's something that she's getting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just in the way that you're getting something out of being pissed off at Mark.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Pick carefully.
Yeah.
Have you found tips to so if you're trying to change your thought process, do you do the self-talk thing in the mirror, or do you
I don't.
Okay,
I
or
always
the
find that's
gratitude
very
journal.
weird.
I
don't like talking
tried
to
it too.
myself. Yeah.
I tried it too, and it was
I had
too
a
weird.
boyfriend who did that all the time. Like, hey, you're awesome. I'm like, hey, you're weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that works for some people. It really does. I use the model all the time. I have a whiteboard, so I'm going this is what I'm thinking, or this is how I'm feeling. For me, it's usually about my business. I take all this action and do all this training and all these webinars, and I had for example, I did a 5-day free training last week, and almost 40 women signed up for it, which was awesome. It's the most I've ever had, and I did it in a private Facebook group. And my expectation was that there would be a lot of engagement. A lot of people would be asking questions. I'd be able to coach in the group, and it was like crickets. And I'm like, what does this mean? I was having a lot of negative thoughts, nobody likes my training, or this isn't good, or So I really had to some people are watching it. They are getting feedback, and it's okay if they haven't watched all the videos. They're there, they'll watch them when they're ready. You know what I mean? We'll nurture these relationships over time. I have provided the best training I can possibly provide. And so I went from being frustrated and disappointed to, you know what, it's okay. And I have some new connections that I didn't have, and that's
Right.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm in an online group, and a few people manage really large Facebook groups. Well, somebody at this table manages a really large Facebook group too. And somebody, and with 10,000 people in it. And he was like, nobody's talking in my group. I have 10,000 people and more joining every day, but barely anyone is talking. I don't know what to do to get them to talk. So what I'm saying is it might not even just be the size of it just,
Yeah, right.
But I think sometimes because it's not a face-to-face thing, they don't, they're going to take it away and use it, but they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Right,
And
or
I
I don't want to type in this random Facebook group of people I may or
I
may not
don't
know about
know,
my
yeah.
personal life.
Or that they are people I know in my community. I don't want them to know my shit.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
It'd be interesting if you did the same group of people as a webinar. Yeah, to see if they talk because there's people there.
Yeah.
Because I'd be the person that would go to a Facebook group. I'm not saying I
Right.
wouldn't pay attention to it or listen to it,
Yeah.
but I probably
May not
wouldn't
say
comment.
anything.
You know,
Right.
and if I did, it would probably be after the event or privately.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm the same way. So, and that's something I
Yeah.
had to recognize too.
Yeah.
You know. The other thing is that Facebook groups, I don't think they provide the notifications in the way they used to. Like, I feel like sometimes people don't see. And I say that because I've missed things from groups that I'll be like, oh, what's going on in that group? And there's a bunch of stuff I hadn't seen or gotten notified.
Yeah, because if for some reason you haven't
Like, what the
commented or shared or
Yeah.
In a while, yeah.
you don't see it. You know.
I don't know. So many possibilities.
Facebook's algorithms change daily.
I know.
All the time.
You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for letting me come.
No, thanks for coming.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I want to do a training on, the next thing I'm thinking about is, just, I don't know what the title's going to be, but basically training on the myth of I don't have enough time or I'm too busy. Because it is all, not always, much of it is in our head.
It's all in our
Yeah.
head. Yeah, and I think it's particularly our generation and women.
Yeah. And we do feel valuable and productive if we're busy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That makes
And that you
sense.
should be busy.
And you should be.
That
Yeah.
that quiet time is not important.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true.
You know, Louise is really teaching me that.
Yeah.
She's a bookkeeper who's in a business group that Nicole just left.
After 4 years.
Absolutely. But Louise is she's a bookkeeper and she has a lot of balance in her life.
Nice.
You know, and
Yeah.
she, you know, said not exactly these words, but basically, you know, I have 10 clients and I'm feeling like my client list is full or something like that. And my thought was, oh, you can be full? Like, I just keep going for more and more and more and more. I didn't
Well,
realize
that's the-
that you could like say, oh, I'm only going to do this amount,
Right.
you know, and she never rushes. She always makes sure that there's time from one thing to the next thing.
Yeah.
She makes sure that she has at least an hour a day to just sit and drink a cup of tea and not do anything. And it was
And
such
honestly,
a different,
You are more productive when you
Yeah.
take that
But
time
that, you know,
off.
but that's the social pressure. You know, to get the next promotion, to get the next client, to make more
Yeah.
money, to be bigger. You know, whereas if you're functioning fine where you are, you're making the income you need to make,
Right.
you're enjoying
it's
what you're
that
doing.
you have to grow. The growth model.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why do you
Why?
always have to be growing?
Yeah, if you're comfortable where you are, stay
Yeah.
there.
Or why is it always growing in your business? Why can't it be growing in another direction? Why can't it say be like, oh, I want to try amateur stand-up comedy?
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with anything,
Yeah.
but I just want to do it.
Yeah.
I thought
So-
about that, doing like improv.
Right. Well, just like I don't know. I've just worked the last few years on cultivating like a little bit more interesting things about me. Because whenever everyone meets me, they're like, "Oh, this is Nicole. This is what she does for work, or whatever."
Yeah.
Or they'll be like, "What do you do for fun?" And I like had nothing to say. So I was like, no. I was at a party and someone said, "What do you do for fun?" And I literally stood there and I was like,
Fun.
"I work a lot." I had nothing to say. So I was like, "All right, the next time someone asks me this question, I'm gonna have something to say." So book groups and
I think that's a squeaky sign.
Oh, maybe
That to
Could
me
be.
is something that's like squeaking.
I wonder if it's the
Moving.
door moving.
oh, it could
If
be.
that door's not closed properly.
Yeah, it could be.
Because is that the sound that you've been?
Yeah.
Yes, I've been hearing it
Yeah.
the whole
Oh,
time.
sorry.
No, I assumed it was like a little sign
sound.
or a door or a,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, if you guys want to know
Yeah.
about my upcoming trainings,
Yeah.
whether online or not, you can
And I would
just
love
put your email
that.
address here or give me your business card.
Well, I think you,
I'll
yeah,
give
well,
this-
you've gotten, I think you should have gotten all the, well, no, but you should have gotten all the submissions.
Oh, okay. All
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you should have everybody's email
Cool.
address.
I'll
Two.
erase this.
Erase the shit out.
Yeah,
And he's a shithead. I like
Can
it.
you email us out that guide to the
Yeah.
whatever
Yes.
stages, things, whatever you have?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
we'll.
I will.
And then I trust you
Okay.
guys are gonna edit out whatever's the
Yeah.
personal
Yep, of course.
stuff.
Of course. Yep.